morning to everyone who's joined. We will begin in about 4 to 5 minutes. We'll just give most people a chance to join. Yeah, so to whoever just joined, we'll begin in about 2-3 minutes because people are consistently joining. So we'll just give as many people a chance to join before beginning. I think we'll begin in about a minute. In the meanwhile, while few people join, um, just quickly recapping some house rules. Before that, let's test out the chat box. In the chat box, you can, if just to find out where everyone is joining from, if you can kind of put. I know, I presume everyone is from a gold loan vertical, so I'm not going to ask vertical. We usually ask what vertical are you from. So if you can maybe just put the city you're joining from, just give everyone a chance to know what the crowd is like. Just while we wait for the next 1 minute for rest of the attendees to join. It'll also give us a chance to test the chat box. You can go to chat below and enter. I guess no one wants to divulge their location. Cool, let's start. So hello all and welcome and thank you for joining on a Tuesday morning. Must be a busy time. Welcome to this webinar on the 6 mandatory rules for gold loan agreements. Brief overview of the structure and house rules before we begin. The total session from our end will be around 35 to 40 minutes max, after which we'll be throwing open the floor for an open question and answer session. However, if you do have any questions during the session, please ask in the Q&A box below. We'll take up some of these questions during the session and during the demo as well, and the rest after the session. And of course, after the session, we'll give you mic access to ask questions. So here's the structure of the session. We'll start with about 4-5 minutes of context setting on the new gold loan directions. Most of you will already know it, but just recapping it anyway. Then we'll get to the meat of the webinar, which is an analysis of the 6 specific rules in the directions related to the agreement and valuation certificate process, and practical tips on how to actually operationally comply with this. The bias here, just full disclosure, will be a digital bias. We're going to focus on how to do it in a digital flow, largely, right? So operational compliance with a digital flow. That's going to be the overarching, overwhelming bias throughout this webinar. Third, we'll show you a demo of an RBI compliant gold loan agreement and valuation certificate process. So you can see how the digital process we talk about in the second section actually looks like, and we'll of course show it via legality. This will take about 10 to 15 minutes. And after this, about 35 to 40 minutes in total, we'll throw open the floor for an open Q&A at the end. In case some of you leave midway, or you know someone who had registered but could not join, or someone who's not registered but this webinar is useful for, don't worry. We will be sharing a recording with all of you within the next 48 hours. So brief introduction. I'm Aditya, Head of Marketing at Legality, and I'll be your host for today. Before Legality, I was a practicing lawyer in Karnataka and have worked on several matters related to banking and RBI compliance before. I'm joined by Shubhesh, our product marketing lead at Legality, and Saurabh, a senior enterprise sales lead at Legality, who actually is currently working with multiple gold lenders to set up paperless agreement processes, the kind we'll be talking about and showing you in this webinar. So the story of these directions, for which we are hosting this webinar today, actually began back in 2024, when the RBI flagged several irregularities that it had observed in the gold loan process. Right, this was part of RBI's wider drive towards curbing fraud and enhancing customer transparency in lending in general. Right, and one thing led to another, and in April, the RBI released draft gold loan directions, which then finally culminated in the comprehensive gold loan directions passed in June, right, which is what we're going to discuss today. And the deadline to, of course, comply with these directions is April 1st, 2026. So it's important to understand, and I think all of you on this call will probably understand this better than us, that before these directions, gold loan regulations were kind of a mess. They were scattered across 31 different rules and regulations. All right, very unwieldy mess. And what RBI has done is it's taken all of these regulations you see on screen, all of them, it's taken it and replaced them with the gold loan directions passed in June. Right, so the 31 on the previous screen are now repealed. You don't need to look at them anymore. Just look at the gold loan direction. So this is not just another RBI direction to add on to a multitude of directions. These directions are now the master regulation governing gold lending and gold lending operations in India. So it's important to understand some core principles underpinning these directions, because this will become very relevant when we discuss the operational compliance later on, right? So the RBI has passed these two directions with two main priorities in mind: fraud prevention and customer transparency. The RBI has explicitly not prioritized smoothness or lack of friction for gold lenders here, right? So if there's any friction that the new directions cause to you as a gold lender, it is intentional friction. The RBI wants gold lenders to actually handle this friction because, again, its priorities are not you, its priorities are fraud prevention and customer transparency. And it wants to achieve this by adding some friction for gold lenders, right? So it's important to understand this because that you need to actually embrace operational friction as a challenge to be solved rather than something to be cleverly worked around, because RBI has introduced friction intentionally. And while these directions are immense and wide scoping in nature, it's important to make clear what we will be covering in this session and what we won't be covering. So in today's session is a very focused session covering what the directions say about gold loan agreements and valuation certificates, essentially the 6 rules for gold loan documentation in India, right? Because this is our area of expertise and we feel confident in giving you reliable information on this area. It's a key operational process that you need to handle and we can help you with it. We will not be covering any aspects of the gold loan directions, any other aspect that is not related to the 6 rules, right? It's not our expertise and it would not be possible to cover it in one session. So with that out of the way, let's dive in, right, to the 6 mandatory requirements for the gold loan agreement or the gold loan document process in the directions. So the first requirement, a very short provision: documentation shall be standardized across the branches of the lender, right? Very short and simple in wording. So this means standardized formats for all documentation, agreements, KFS, valuation certificate, terms and conditions. This means no local versions or tweaks are available or permissible when it comes to the content of the documents. And in theory, this feels like a very straightforward requirement, right? But when you peel back a layer, there is operational legwork needed to implement this. So let's actually peel back a layer, right? So there are two parts to this. The first part is ensuring that all your documentation is drafted, reviewed, vetted, and finalized at a central level by your legal and compliance team. So that's the first part. This is operationally simple, even if the actual vetting and finalization sometimes does take time. That's the first part, but it's not enough, right? Because ultimately, compliance with this provision is not just having the standardized documentation, but ensuring that the standardized documentation is there in all your branches across India, right? So it's not just about having these standardized documents at a central level, easily done, but also ensuring that the staff at a branch level have zero control over the draft itself, right? They should not be able to make any change to the draft. Um, that's finalized. It's also about ensuring that when legal and compliance actually updates the draft at a central level, let's say a new RBI norm comes in, then the draft has to be updated. The new updated version is used by each branch as soon as the update is made, and not the old copy, right? So ultimately, this boils down to three things: the standardized documents, easy to do, and two operationally intensive things, which is ensuring there is zero ability for branch level to make changes, and transmitting any changes made to the draft at a central level in a timely manner, and ensuring no one uses an old copy, right? So what's the easiest way to ensure all three, right? So in a physical flow, once the central team finalizes the copy, the actual transmission on the ground is much tougher. In a digital flow, it's actually much easier to comply, right? Because your central team can maintain control of the entire flow. So the first part, of course, is setting up the common template for India-wide. So the legal and compliance teams finalize the document. They then, from a central level, configure this final template or this final version of the agreement kit into either the LOS, LMS, CBS or the document execution platform. All right. And once this is done, and we'll talk about like how you make this choice later, right? And once this is done, all branches will be forced to using the set templates since it is configured and kind of hard coded into the software. Uh, and presumably with this hard coding, you need to ensure that the logic of the software is such that the branch actually has zero edit access to the documents that are configured into either the LOS, CBS, or document execution platform. So that's the first thing, setting up the common template. Second part, right, is okay, let's say legal and compliance decides to change some words. As you might go back to the previous slide, decides to change some words of the agreement kit. So the first part is again legal and compliance having finalized the changes. Second part is from a central level, they update the agreement kit that is configured on the LOS, LMS, CBS, or the document execution platform. And third, once these changes are done, all branches will only get access to these updated versions because the software will only give them access to this, right? There is zero scope, on a software level of them using an older version. We'll talk about a bit about how to do this during the demo as well. Now on to requirement 2, which now prescribes mandatory requirements that the gold loan agreement must contain. Right. So to comply, you just need to ensure the following fields are mandatorily included and filled into your gold loan kit. The fields that are currently listed on screen. I think most of you would already be having this in your gold loan agreements. Very simple to understand, but at an operational level, this also means that there can actually be no mistakes on the ground. So you need to prevent your branch folks from filling it incorrectly or missing out certain fields because these fields are now mandatory. Right. And there's two ways to do this in a digital process. Right. The best way is what we're showing you on screen, which is to simply automate the actual gold loan agreement kit preparation process itself. Right. And we've shown you two ways to do this on screen. Right. So method 1 is where, let's say, your LOS, LMS, CBS, which has collected the data, actually within the software itself auto fills the agreement and generates a base 64 PDF, which is then passed on to the document execution platform. And then the document execution platform, like legality, sends it for e-sign. So that's one, where the kind of creation is happening at the LOS end. Method 2 is where the LOS, CBS, LMS has the data, passes on that data to the document execution platform. The document execution platform then pre-fills it and generates a base 64 PDF, which is then sent for e-sign, right? Whatever option you choose here, the key thing to remember is both of these options automate the actual filling in of the document. And this ensures that the mandatory fields that the RBI wants are filled in. Logic also ensures that if any mandatory field is not filled in, the process is not allowed to move forward, right? And in this, there's no discretion of the branch staff being involved in any scenario, right? So it's completely automated without discretion. It's essentially a systematic way to ensure that you are complying with RBI's gold loan agreement requirements. But let's say there's also manual process possible, right? In case you want the agreement filled in real time or you want a manual review, you automatically fill it, but you still want a manual review. So let's just take one of the flows from the previous slide. Let's say the LOS CBS generates the base64 PDF and sends it to the document execution platform. You simply basically at that stage, before eSign, you add a checker or a reviewer stage in your eSign flow, right? Where someone at the branch can actually, in the same flow itself, digitally see it, review it, give it a sign off. And the logic should be such that if the checker does not approve it, it doesn't go for eSign. And it will only go for eSign if the checker actually approves it, right? So this is what you need to add in your digital flow if you want that manual review. But ultimately, whether you choose an automated or manual process, it's up to your own evaluation. That's your call to take. Third requirement, I mean, halfway there before the demo, right? The third requirement is very similar to the second. Charges must be listed in the KFS. Again, this is very simple. Simply follow the RBI KFS circular, right? More specifically, follow two requirements of the RBI KFS circular because the KFS circular has 7 key operational requirements that it requires from the KFS process. And the first two requirements are that the KFS must be in RBI's Annexure A format, which gives all the details that you need. And the second is the KFS must include computation sheet of APR and amortization schedule. These first two requirements and complying fully with these first two requirements will ensure that the all charges in KFS mentioned requirement of the gold loan directions is also met, right? There are 5 other operational requirements related to KFS. I won't go into that here because it's an entire webinar's worth of content, but we've done a webinar on it in the past. We've done several webinars, in fact, and we provided a QR code here. You can scan it and access that webinar. We'll share this deck with you again within the next 48 hours. So let's move on to the fourth requirement, right? This is where it gets into newer territory, right? The fourth requirement pertains to the gold valuation certificate. So clause 27 of the gold loan directions now makes issuance of a gold valuation certificate mandatory for every disbursal. So there's twofold compliance for this specific provision, right? On one hand, you need to issue a valuation certificate with the details that are mentioned here on screen, right? You can't compromise even on one detail. The certificate must have all details. Operationally, the first 3 details and the 5th detail, you probably already have it on your valuation certificate. But the image of gold, which we found that some valuers have, some valuers don't, is now also mandatory, right? And this requires some operational legwork at your end to ensure that that image is also affixed of the gold. So anyway, one part is actually creating and ensuring per transaction this valuation certificate is there per disbursal. And the next part is handing over a copy of the valuation certificate to the borrower and attaching it to the loan agreement, right? This second part will require some operational legwork. So how does it work and what is the logic you need to set up to comply with the valuation certificate requirement, right? So here's an example. There are multiple permutations possible. This is one of them, right? So let's say the valuator is valuing the gold, step 1, and then passes on these details to the branch officer because we've spoken to many gold lenders and we found that often this is a manual process and the valuator is not very tech savvy and they're going to write it down, right? Anyway, they write it down. The branch officer sitting there takes those details and fills them into the system and then takes a photo of the gold. The system then takes all of this data, takes this picture of the gold and generates the valuation certificate with the photo, right? Either in your LOS or in your document execution platform, like in the previous step, right? The creation of document can happen in either of these. Then the valuator e-signs it there and then at the branch on the execution interface. Then it's e-signed by the borrower, either directly on the interface there at the branch or on the borrower's device where you can send them through WhatsApp or SMS. Once both e-sign, this automatically sends a copy to the borrower and it automatically sends a copy back to your LOS or CBS from where you can attach it to the loan agreement, right? This is the broad logic. So how does this logic, this flow that we talked about actually comply, right? So this is how it ensures compliance. One, between step 2 and 3, you need to have a logic where the whole process gets blocked if mandatory data fields in the valuation certificate template are not filled in. It needs to get blocked. So here, if you ensure this, you comply with RBI's mandatory like format or requirements of the certificate requirement. And next, at the bottom, the red box there, once both parties sign it, there is an automated mandatory sending of it both to your LOS or CBS and to the borrower, right? It's automated, no discretion of the branch official at all. So that's the fourth requirement. Fifth requirement tied to the valuation certificate, right? Where borrower presence is now mandatory, right? This is to prevent fraudulent insertion of, say, extra gold into what's being valued for the purposes of laundering. So borrowers must be present. So the idea is that they can bear witness to a fair valuation of the gold that they have given, right? Or the jewelry that they've given. So here to comply, you will need to ensure that A, the borrower is present at the branch during the valuation, and B, prove to the RBI that the borrower is present, right? And you can do this via geofencing system in the e-sign process, where you set the coordinates of your branch. And let's say you set a radius, let's say 20 meters, right? That you need to figure out based on the size of your branch to ensure that it's happening in the branch vicinity. In a geofenced e-sign system, if either party signs outside that radius, the process will simply not proceed. There's nothing the branch person can do to make it proceed, right? So they cannot circumvent it. And you systematically ensure through this that the valuation actually happens with both valuer and borrower being in the same location, right? Which is now a mandatory requirement under the RBI Gold Loan Directions. So remember that flow we showed you on the previous slide. Here it is again, right? You simply add a GPS capture with geofencing, and you can add a face match also. You can add a face capture also, right? For both the valuator and the borrower at the document execution step, at the valuation certificate signing step. Before that, you add a geofencing and you add, if you want, a face capture as well. If either of them signs outside the location, then this whole process, like the process is simply not allowed to proceed. And so you're automatically ensuring compliance of mandatory borrower presence via this feature, right? In case of a successful transaction, of course, the GPS coordinates of both the valuer and the borrower will be displayed in a successful audit trail, as we are showing on screen. This is via legality, of course. However, if you're doing it through your own system that you've built yourself or some other system, you just need to ensure that the audit trail actually is enforceable, is verifiable by the RBI, and actually contains the details you need to contain to actually prove that, hey, during RBI audits, both the borrower and the valuer were in the same location, right? So now on to the final requirement, the sixth and final rule. We're almost at the stage of the demo. The borrower communication must be in a language understandable by the borrower. I think before that, there are a few questions relevant to what we've spoken about before, right? One is, I think 10 minutes back on, can factual changes be made at a branch level? So we talked about mandatory things that are needed to be put into the document, right? Like in the agreement, these fields. Can factual changes be made at a branch level, which is true, right? You need, say, the borrower's name varies from transaction to transaction. It's not possible for a centralized system to do it. Someone at the branch has to do it. So there you leave some fields open for it to be filled at the branch. Just ensure that the filling up of that field itself is mandatory, right? Ensure that the field has to be filled in. Of course, the field can be filled in at the branch level. So you can ensure that all of it, 90% of the document is hard-coded with only factual fields having to be filled out at the branch level, right? And ensure those fields are mandatory so that they cannot leave it blank. The second, of course, is what is the difference in the next requirement? The LOS one, this one, no, previous one, this one, right? What is the difference between both these options shown, right? The difference is simply where you are creating. So someone had a question, what's the difference here? The difference is simply you are creating the document at the LOS level or the document execution platform level. On a functional level, there is no difference. The same outcome you want is achieved. It depends on how your LOS is configured. It depends on how your document execution platform is configured and whether it supports it, right? So it's purely an ops call you need to take depending on ease ultimately. So really look at, is it easier for me to do this on my LOS, or is it easier for me to pass the data to my document execution system and do it, right? So it's purely an operational convenience thing that you need to choose. And another question on KFS, whether the KFS needs to be issued before the disbursement or after the disbursement. The KFS needs to be happen before the disbursement. The KFS needs to happen at the stage of offer, right? Uh, KFS to be provided to borrowers at stage of loan offer. See the fourth requirement here, and also included as a summary document in the loan kit. So in no circumstance can it be after disbursement. KFS has to be before disbursement, otherwise you're in violation. So if you only share it after disbursement, it's a violation of the KFS rules. Uh, Another question on how will borrowers GPS be tracked. So we'll show that to you in the demo, right? So in about 6-7 minutes, we'll show you a demo. Right. So that's 5 requirements we'll cover. This final requirement, right? Local language, vernacular language. Again, those of you familiar with the KFS guidelines will be familiar with this as well, right? Borrower communication must be in a language understandable. So there's 2 requirements. The documentation must be in a language the borrower can understand, and if the borrower is illiterate, key terms must be explained in front of a witness. So I think many of us are already familiar with this concept of a vernacular declaration, right? The image on screen right now is a sample text of this declaration. And for years, lenders have used this kind of where the borrower does not understand English. And the idea is that if this declaration affirms that while the documents are in English, the contents were explained to the borrower in vernacular language. There's 2 issues with this. One is the very declaration stating this is in English, not in vernacular. And 2, it doesn't matter if the specific declaration, even if you made it in vernacular, right? The gold loan direction requirement is very clear. The documentation, entire documentation must be in a language that the borrower can understand. So partial documentation, no. No documentation, no. All documentation must be in that language. So how do you operationally comply with this? Again, in a digital flow, right? In a physical one, it's much tougher. In a physical one, you'd probably put the common templates of your location available for them to print. Um, However you want to do that. Right? Let's say you're in Maharashtra, you pick 4 languages that you want to pick in Maharashtra: Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi, English, and maybe another language. And you put it there saying the probability is they'll speak one of these 5 languages. In a digital process, you can actually get it down to a very granular level, right? So how do you do that, right? The first step is on the back end, you configure and digitize a gold agreement kit template in each local language that you want. Then you need to map that template to a specific document execution workflow in the backend. Again, this workflow that you map it to depends on whether it's in the LOS or in the document execution platform. It depends on where your base 64 PDF is being generated. So the second step here ultimately is determined by where your base 64 is being generated. That's where the second step happens, right? So you map that kit to that specific workflow in the backend. Then in the front end, on your app or web interface, you offer the customer or borrower a language selection choice, just like you see in ATMs across the country. Each button here is mapped to the workflow you've configured for that language in the backend. And so when the customer selects that language, the workflow mapped to that language is initiated, and the borrower sees the gold loan kit in that language, right? So you can ensure actually granular level selection. You don't have to guess when the borrower walks in, have the borrower choose the language. And we support this functionality in legality via our APIs. I will show you a brief demo of how it can work on the back end, not via API, obviously, because it's a demo, but via our dashboard to show you the logic. And of course, for this requirement, if the borrower is illiterate, you will need to also have the following 2 features enabled, right? You will need to ensure that the signing then only happens via a biometric system, because a lot of gold lenders do OTP and biometric. For someone who's illiterate, you may want to ensure that it's only biometric, because Obviously, presumption is like the illiterate, so the OTP is something someone will have to give them. The second thing is, of course, ensure that the witness signature is also recorded, right? Perhaps along with the face capture or GPS capture of the witness themselves. So you'll need like a separate workflow just for this segment of borrowers where you have an extra signatory, which is the witness, right? So you need a specific workflow for this. So that's that. That's the 6 requirements under the new gold loan directions. We prepared a summary slide here, condensing what I've spoken about so far in this webinar, the 6 rules for the gold loan agreement and valuation process, along with how you can operationally comply. We'll also be sharing a recording with you within the next 48 hours. And this slide, I won't, of course, go through this slide fully, standardized documentation, how like format, mandatory fields, KFS, gold valuation certificate, borrower presence during valuation, and of course, communication in a local language. A very brief checklist, and we'll of course share the deck with you as well. But let's now actually just dive into an actual demo to show you how a lot of the things I told you in theory can actually work in practice. So I'll hand that over to Shubesh, our product marketing lead, and he'll show you guys a quick demo of how you can do this via legality.
Thanks a lot, Aditya, and welcome everyone. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
Let me know once it's visible.
We've received a few questions again in the Q&A box about vernacular. So we will be in the latter part of the demo, we'll be covering how you can set up the vernacular workflows. We'll take up these questions then.
Okay, great. So what we've done here for you is we've made like a mock system of, when a customer walks into your branch, what they will do each process. Of course, it doesn't cover every single process that they would be doing to get the gold loan, but this is like all the key documents or other key steps or key processes they'll be undergoing when they want to, avail gold loans.
So yeah, this is
So
a
let's say
mock app. It's not a mandatory app. This is just a
yeah,
replica of a generic gold loan branch app that we made. It will not map exactly to how yours is. We've tried to kind of make it generic so that it loosely applies to everyone. The idea is to show you the logic behind it and not exact pixel perfect detail.
yeah. And in a lot of these, because this is a mock-up, we've pre-filled a lot of information and we're only filling like, relevant information for this demo. Otherwise, this is going to take like very long if I start filling the application form as well. So, which is the first thing the customer would also be doing as soon as they walk in. So let's say this is a customer and we've pre-filled their information in the application form. I just enter the contact details for this customer now. In this
We'll
case, the
put email in
customer,
the demo, of course, but email is obviously, I think, for most gold loan cases, email won't be a field. We've just put it so that we can show it to you in the demo. But
yeah.
these are again
So
not mandatory fields. This is just a mock application form. We made your application form. We have like very different fields.
So let's say right now, if you can see, it's WhatsApp and email. If you want, let's say for your particular branch or for your company, SMS makes more sense. Then you can also send SMS on the number that you're capturing in when you're onboarding customers. So the next step once they've filled the application would be to do KYC. And once they've done KYC, the information that we've captured, you can also use this information later on with legality to prevent fraud. For example, let's say the Aadhaar that we've verified. When they're doing Aadhaar resign on the loan agreement, we can make sure the Aadhaar used there is the same as that they used during KYC. Similarly, the photo that you're capturing of the customer during KYC, if you want, you can use a feature that we have called as face match and ensure that the person who's signing is the same one who did the KYC by matching their live photo during e-sign with this KYC photo. In this demo, we are not using either of these features because I'm not entering my Aadhaar details in the application form, nor am I doing the KYC. So, but I'll show you when I show you the backend of the demo in like 2 minutes. So once they've done KYC also, they'll go for valuation, for example. And here is where, the valuator would come in. We've heard like two primary ways how a valuator is currently operating. One is they either have their own valuator app, uh, and second is they are filling it out physically on a piece of paper and giving it to the RM, who then enters the details into their LOS LMS. Let's take the first thing as example, wherein they have their own valuators app. So probably at the start of the day, they'll be entering their details to log into their app. I'm just Quickly gonna log in as the valuator into this valuator app that we've made. And after valuation, they've found out that, for two bangles in the necklace that the borrower uh, has given as collateral, this is the details that they've captured, and they've, let's say, they've also added photos of the thing into their valuator app. Now here, somebody had asked what was the difference between the two methods that we had shown for PDF creation. Now there are two things you can do. You can either pass all of this data directly to legality and create a agreement directly on legality, or you can, if your LOS LMS supports PDF creation, directly use this information in your LOS LMS or valuator app and generate a PDF inside that. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to pass this data to legality and create the agreement there itself. So I'm just going to click on this, and my certificate has been generated. And then I'll click on e-signing the valuation certificate as the
Yeah.
valuator minded. So if you would see, is my
So,
new
so
screen
again,
visible?
yeah, it's loading. But what can happen here is again on the valuator app. But what we've seen for a lot of gold lenders is that the valuator is not touching technology. They're writing it on a piece of paper. So imagine at the branch, the valuator passes these details. The branch officer, branch sales officer, branch officer, this is happening on their tablet or desktop, right? And the valuator sitting next to him. All right. So the valuator is seeing this. Valuator has passed on the details. The branch person has entered the details and generated it via legality. So the valuation certificate is there. Now you need the valuator to, of course, it's the valuator's valuation. So they need to put the sign. All right.
So this is a dummy valuation certificate that we've built just for this demo. Yours
Uh,
might look very different from what we have right now.
yeah. And I think someone asked a question here in the Q&A box and it's very relevant to this. Shubhash, if you can scroll down on this template. Right? They asked a question on what happens if there is multiple jewels or multiple gold collateral. Right? Do we need separate valuation certificates with multi jewels? So what you can do is also you can have them on a common valuation certificate. You just need to ensure all the details the RBI wants per collateral is mentioned on the common document, right? So it's not that you can say these two and have a generic purity or combined net weight. Do it in a table like this, right? Just ensure that the specific details required by RBI for both those collaterals are there along with the image. Yeah, Shubhash, go ahead.
So image here is currently missing, and I'm going to show you why in just like 1 second. So I've proceeded to e-sign this document, and if you'll see, I have two options to upload these images. If you want, you can directly pass it through the through valuator app or your LOS LMS. But just to show you this, how this particular thing works, we've kept it this way.
Right. And if you're doing this through a tablet, Shubhash is doing it through a desktop. If you're doing this through a tablet, when you click on choose file, it allows you to, a tablet or a mobile, it allows you to take image live.
So I'm going to proceed after uploading those images. So as you can see, my image has been uploaded, and my signature as the valuator is going to appear here because this is the e-sign coordinate that we have configured. So I'll click on proceed again. Now this is going to capture my location, and I'll just proceed again. Now it's going to do a quick liveliness check for me. So as you could see, it was detecting my facial positioning, and it was giving me some prompts. So that's our AI, which is continuously, seeing whether the person who's in front of the camera doing it correctly or not, if there is any foul play involved. So I've successfully captured my GPS coordinate, and I've successfully captured my face to prove that I was present at the branch during this valuation as the valuator. So I'll click on proceed, and I'll select my signature to e-sign this valuation certificate by giving my e-sign consent. So okay,
Just
so
to
I've
keep in mind,
successfully
sorry,
e-signed.
1 second, just to keep in mind, someone asked a question about agriculture, gold loan, scale of finance, and a 712 extract, right? We've shown you sample documents. If ultimately this is a sample, so you can include any type of document you want in this flow, right? It's not mandatory that you have to use this template that we're showing you in this demo.
Yeah. Is my mobile screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So now for valuator, or sorry, for the borrower's e-sign or to confirm their presence, you can do it two ways. Either you can send e-sign link to the valuation certificate on their device, or you can do it in the valuator's device itself that you would have at the branch. So it depends on how you wanna, use it. Either way is fine. In this case, I'm sending it to WhatsApp because we just wanted to show you, if you want to do WhatsApp for the borrower, you can also do that. So I'll click on e-sign, and it's the same process. The validator would see the valuation certificate. Sorry, the borrower would see the valuation certificate. They'll click on proceed. They'll capture their location, and
Asked about it right now. This is the liveliness check, right?
yeah,
It's not just a
and
face photo capture, it's an actual detection of face, whether it's an actual human face. You can also add face match to it if you want. So if you have the borrower's ID, you can also do a face match if you want that additional level of security.
so it's a very similar flow. For both of these, we're using a virtual signature, and it's done. So
Yeah, and we'll show. So one question we received, interesting question on the geofencing. So we'll show that to you when Shubhesh shows you the audit trail. Yeah, go ahead, Shubhesh.
yeah. So firstly, I'll quickly show you the valuation certificate. As you can see, e-sign for the valuator and e-sign for the borrower, both are captured. Right now, it looks same because it's using my details for both of those signatures.
And
And
ultimately, you
both
can
are,
also, this is selection. You can also do a scribble or you can do an Aadhaar e-sign if you want, right? We've shown you one type of sign so that it's quicker in this demo. You can use any legality e-sign available for this. We've shown you
so
the quickest possible way. Yeah.
I'm gonna show both of those e-signs also in KFS and in loan agreements in like
Yeah.
2 minutes. So as you can see in this audit trail, my face has been captured to prove that I was at the branch, and it is also capturing my location. If you'll see here, uh, to show where I am as the valuator. Uh, this location is correct. I'm currently in USA, so don't feel like I'm using a VPN or I'm spoofing my location. Similarly, for the borrower also, the second e-sign that I did, if you can see, my photo has been captured and it shows the same location as it did in the previous one. So this way you can very easily prove to RBI that both the people for this particular loan, the valued and the borrower, were present at the same place, and the borrower was they knew what was happening in the valuation. There's transparency in that process.
Yeah. Shubhesh, just stay on the audit trail 1 second.
Okay.
I think there was a question is what if the branch process, so we've shown you for the branch process, which makes sense, right? So what if it's not a branch process? So what if the valuator is present at the borrower's residence, right? It's a home dispersal, a home visit process, right? Which is increasingly like one of the future ways to do gold lending. All right. And the loan sanction is happening at home, right? So will GPS successfully be captured considering it's not at branch? So there's another way to do this, right? If you're doing it at home, on the borrower's home, what you can do is there's GPS capture and there's geofencing, right? You can collect a GPS and you can geofence it. Geofencing ensures that there's a restriction on the location itself. So if you switch on geofencing and put it at your branch coordinates, then yes, at the home, it will not allow it to proceed. What you can either do is switch off geofencing for a home visit flow and just have a GPS capture flow so that in the audit trail, the same GPS location is showing in the audit trail, right? You won't get the benefit of course, geofencing, but you'll get the benefit of tracking that, okay, both of them are at the same place, right? So that's one. Second way, of course, to do it is have the GPS coordinates be a manual entry that the RM who's visiting the home has to enter when the signing is happening. They enter it and then give it to the valuator to sign, then give it to the borrower to sign. That's a slightly clunky process, but you get the benefit of geofencing with that process. All right. So what we've shown you is a branch process because this is what 80% of gold loans are dispersed via. But for a home visit, you can either switch off geofencing. You will just ensure that GPS is captured and you can track that, okay, both GPS were at the same location in the audit trail. Or you can have the RM on the ground enter the GPS coordinates of the home and then give it to the valuator and the borrower to sign.
So in a at-home flow wherein you're just using a GPS, there's another thing you can do. You can add an accuracy threshold because whenever you're capturing a GPS location, it's gonna be like off by certain meters. That's just how GPS technologies work. In that case, it may happen the valuator may be like in the audit trail, it might come out they're like, let's say 15-20 meters away from the borrower, and that may cause some issues. So what you can do is you can set like that accuracy threshold, which until and unless both of them are in a similar area and in the same location, the e-sign won't proceed. So that's like one added uh, security measure that we've added to the normal GPS capture if you don't want to use geofencing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
our valuation is done now. I'm going to proceed back to my flow.
Yeah. Rest of the questions we'll answer. We'll show the rest of the demo and then we'll answer them.
Yeah. So once the valuation is done and the loan gets sanctioned, the next step would be signing the loan docket. In this particular demo, we're just showing the KFS and loan agreement, and we're going to sign them one by one individually. We're not adding other documents that you might have in your gold loan flows, like sanction letter or DPNs or any other document you might be executing. But in a similar fashion as to what I'm going to show you now, you can execute all of those as well. So I'm going to execute KFS. Sorry, I should not have stopped sharing my screen. So as you can see, the invitation has been sent to my mobile. So I'll just share my mobile screen again. Yeah. Yeah. So there's an invite for me to sign the KFS as the borrower. I'll click on e-sign the KFS. The first thing that opens as soon as I do this is a language selection. This is the ATM interface that Aditya was talking about during his pitch, that the customers can select within our flow. Uh, Mind this is not going to change the language of the document because that's already pre-configured to English. If you want to change the language of the document, you need to collect this language at the start of the flow. This is only going to change the language of the interface. So I'm going to choose English for now, but I'm going to show you other languages also during this flow of how it works in the interface. Okay, so this is the KFS, and as you can see, we've already pre-filled this with all the information of the borrower and the loan. These details, feel free to ignore. We'll just kind of added dummy details. So we'll proceed. And as you can see, the current screen is the scribble screen. Like you would have seen this screen for the valuation certificate, which was the select signature. But for KFS, we just wanted to show you, if you want to scribble signatures, you can do that also. And let's say your borrower is like, they just want to switch the language here. So they can, because sometimes certain words you understand in certain languages only, and you don't understand them in other languages. So you do get to change those languages, and the interface automatically adapts to that language in legality. Yeah. So I'm switching it back to English. I just wanted to show you that, interface changes language. So I've just scribbled my signature and I've given my e-sign consent, and that's it. My KFS is signed. Similarly, once this is done, now here you have the option to directly send the borrower to the loan agreement, or you can like see the KFS first. Once you're satisfied with it, then manually send the loan agreement to the borrower. In this case, I've manually sent the loan agreement to the borrower. If you'll see, my KFS and my audit trail is also on my WhatsApp now. This is
Agreement.
the
You can go to the
audit
loan
trail.
agreement. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in the loan agreement, there's the valuation certificate at the top. Then there's the KFS. Then there's fully stamped loan agreement. Uh, if you can see the, like, this is a mock stamp paper that we're using for this demo to show you, how this stamp paper works and why this is compliant with Indian laws. This is the defaced legend with unique ID for the document. It will have unique serial stamp number, and I'll proceed to e-sign this. So as you can see, we offer 4 ways to do Aadhaar e-sign. For this demo, I'm going to proceed with OTP, but we're going to show you biometric as well. For Iris, if you have Iris devices at your branch, you can use that. Face will not work for this demo because I'm using an iPhone and it works currently only on Android. That's a limitation given to us by the e-sign provider themselves. So I've done my e-sign consent and it's going to redirect me to Protein. I'll just enter my Aadhaar number here. Let's say Protein is not working. So what are you going to do? All the borrower will have to do is refresh and they'll be taken to a second ESP. I'll just copy the C OTP. And once this OTP verification completes, my loan agreement is going to be signed as the borrower. As for the lender side signatures, you have two options with legality. One is a doc signer and another is automated virtual sign. You can use either depending on what you want to use. So my signature is done. And if you'll see, I got the message everyone has e-signed automatically. I didn't have to do anything for the lender side signature. And the signature also automatically came for the lender. This is the lender signature, and this is the signature Aadhaar e-sign signature that I did.
Yeah. This we've shown you automatic. You can, of course, do it manually also. Some people, I think, told us they want a manual signature. That's also possible. We just want to show you all the options. So with that, let's also show biometric. I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up this particular process using
Yeah.
legality. So I'll just sign into my sandbox. So give me like a second.
Yes, while you're doing that, answer a few questions. So one question is, since the valuation is made by appraiser will be updated in the LOS by the maker, can the appraiser signature be captured through OTP? Absolutely. We've shown you one without the OTP. You can add an OTP as well. So yes, absolutely yes. The other question is, what about rural areas where GPS is not available, where we've answered, where we've asked about it. So one, lot of microfinance institutions use our GPS capture in rural areas. We do work in 2G, 3G environments, and of course, GPS does not rely on the network requirement. GPS relies on satellite. So we found that it largely works even in rural areas, just based on our experience working with microfinance institutions. Yeah,
Okay.
Subhash, go ahead.
Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Great. Cool. So I'm going to show you how to quickly create a workflow that you can use for your gold loan journeys. It's like literally a 2 minutes thing. So just click on create workflow, give it a name. I'm going to configure a gold loan agreement to this. So what? So with legality, you can do two things. You can either choose a PDF to run a workflow, or you can uh, this is for when your LOS LMS is generating the document and you're passing it to legality to e-sign. But let's say your LOS LMS doesn't have that ability to generate PDFs, which I think was also a question by somebody. So in that case, what do? You just pass data from LOS LMS to our templates. So we've made this template for gold loan agreements, and I'm just gonna click on next. This is my template. This is a different template than what you saw in the demo, but this is just like to show you how you can do things. All of this PAN details, address, you can pass it from your LOS LMS. I'll click on next. Second step, once you've configured the document that you want to do. So once you've configured this document, whoever is running this workflow or whoever is executing loan agreements at any branch, they will see the same document everywhere in the country or at every branch basically. So let's say in this case, there's just one borrower and they're going to do, they'll have all four options. If you want, you can even, like as I said, you can verify their Aadhaar detail with KYC during the e-sign, but we don't need to do that for this biometric e-sign. There's another thing I want to show you, which is Aadhaar first, which is a feature, wherein at branch, if you're giving multiple options, people do may get confused, right? Why do I have OTP? Why do I have biometric? Which one should I choose? So what you can do is you would have a preferred way of doing e-sign. From what we have found out, biometric is the preferred way of doing gold loan, e-signing gold loan agreements. So that's going to be our first order priority e-sign. But sometimes biometric may not be working properly, right? So you would need a backup. So in that case, what you can do is if biometric e-sign doesn't work, automatically a second type of Aadhaar e-sign would appear, which is OTP Aadhaar in this case. So I'm going to set the order 2. So order 1 is the first thing that they're going to see. Order 2 is if the first option doesn't work, in this case biometric, then OTP e-sign is going to work. So people can retry biometric e-sign once. If it fails once, they're gonna have a retry option. If
I
that
think
also
here
fails,
show order one, OTP as one and biometric as two, just so we can show this flow. Yeah,
sure.
let's go. Let's go and execute.
Great. Now, as for security features that that we showed in the valuation certificate, what we were showing you was a geofencing under capture GPS location. So you can set location based restrictions, which is basically GPS geofencing that we were showing you earlier. And accuracy is the one that we were telling you about. When the agent is going at the home, you can put an accuracy threshold to ensure that they're in the same place. For photos that you're capturing, we showed you a liveliness test, but there's also the option of doing face match that we said, which will match your photo during eSign with
Shubhash,
your
I think
AI.
let's move on to the sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my workflow is ready. If you're not explaining it to somebody, it's not going to take as much time. I'm just going to run this. My template is already selected. If you'll see, I don't have any other option. So anyone at branch, they will only have one template that they can execute. Here, I'd like to invite Saurabh, who's our sales lead, and he's going to show you how biometric eSign works. Yeah, Saurabh, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Shvesh. Let me just share my screen. So this is the invite that I have received from Shubhesh. So as a customer, let's say I click on sign. I see my loan agreement. If everything is fine, I'll click on proceed. I'll be asked to enter an OTP which is sent by legality to further authenticate that the right
This
person
you can
is.
of course remove this OTP process in your final flow.
So I'll just enter that. Now over here, I'm able to see only OTP as an option. So let's say if a customer walks in and they do not have an option to, or they do not have their mobile number linked with their Aadhaar number. So in that case, let's say their number is not linked, so they'll cancel this option. And they'll again click on proceed. Now this time, as you see, we are able to see the biometric option also. So if I select that and I click on proceed, accept the consent, and I get redirected to the ESP web page of Protean. I've already plugged in my device, Mantra L1 device. So it is already showing over here. So I'll just select this and enter my Aadhaar number. After this, I have to click on the consent and click on capture. The red light on the biometric starts popping up. So I'll just have to keep start again.
So for cases like this, wherein biometric e-sign is facing some issue, it could be an issue of the devices, it could be an issue of the ESP, it could be an issue of the fingerprint of the person. For such cases is where you need Aadhaar first. Right now we showed you the opposite order to show you the feature of, but here what you can do is, let's say this doesn't work, you cancel this, you restart the signing thing, and again from biometric you'll go to OTP.
Yeah.
So
Or you
over
can
here,
do
my
Aadhaar
fingerprint.
face also. Aadhaar face is now increasingly an option as a backup for uh, biometric.
So over here, my fingerprint got captured. It will validate with the UIDI database that it has. And if it matches, then the signature will get completed.
Great.
So immediately I will receive this email also or SMS where I will be able to see the entire signed document with my Aadhaar certificate details. Along with this, we will again share the audit trail for this document as well, which will have my Aadhaar authentication type, it will tell, and the other, my Aadhaar certificate details also will be shown over.
Great. Thanks, Saurabh.
Okay, there's just one
Great.
last thing that I wanted to show everyone. And I'm sorry, I know this is taking a bit of a time, but we're covering a lot of ground today. So one thing that we mentioned during a presentation was all the changes that are being done at the central level, they should reflect at the branches. So how do you do that with legality? So you all saw this document, right? Just now, this was the document that Saurabh was signing. Now let's say I want to change this document. So all your central team needs to do is they need to go to this workflow, and let's say they have a new template that they've configured. You edit this, and all you need to do is select the new template. So currently, previously I was using this template, but this is, let's say, my new updated template. So I'm gonna select this, I'm gonna click on next, and I'm gonna save this workflow. So yeah, once this is saved, no matter whether you're directly using a dashboard like how I am currently, or you're done API integrations with legality, this new document is automatically going to show up in your workflow. So for example, if I run this, you'll see the document has been changed here. And this is my new agreement.
Great, thanks,
And
Adarsh.
it's going to work the same at your branches also. So they'll see the new agreement that you've configured. So yeah, with that, the demo comes to an end. I hope
Thanks.
this was clear. And if you have any questions, please ask us.
Right. So yeah, legality, you can do this compliance digitally via legality. Multiple ways to e-sign, vernacular templates, built-in fraud prevention. What we've shown you in the demo. We are already doing it for many gold lenders. Azima, if you can go to the next slide. Right. And for you, thank you for attending, for your patience. Also, we have a small surprise for you on the next slide. We've actually condensed all our learnings from working with gold lenders into a comprehensive playbook. So a lot of the things you saw in today's webinar in more detail, a lot of things you need to maybe make a business case internally if you want to make a business case for a digital paperless agreement flow internally. It's all there in this playbook. You can simply scan here to download it for free, early access to all of you, because you've joined us for 1 hour on a Tuesday. We'll share this deck with you also, so you can download it from there. Yeah, and I think we'll take a few questions that were there. So if you have any questions which you want to ask verbally, you can also raise your hand. I know a few people had their hands raised. I will give you guys mic access in a minute. But yeah, scan this to download our gold loan playbook. So one question we've of course received is, how about joint accounts, if that is being handled, and if yes, how? So one thing is important to remember is through legality, you can absolutely any product flow you have, you can do it. You just have to configure a legality workflow for it and the document logic for it. We are a neutral platform, use case neutral platform. You can do absolutely any use case. You can pass on any document through legality. So yes, if you have a specific joint account flow, what you can do is, for example, have a document where I presume there'll be two signers. You can have two borrower signatures configured with coordinates, right? So that you can do, it depends on your workflow configuration. The second is, of course, how does our application support diamond jewelry lending in terms of valuation and process? That depends on you, right? It depends on your valuer and your appraiser. Legality will just help you operationally achieve the valuation certificate process. We cannot help you with the actual valuation process itself. Someone has actually commented that usual practices dual valuations are done independently for high value loans as per the lender policy. Fair enough, right? Ultimately, it's dependent on the lender policy, and this is probably standard practice. So we support any possible way. We are a use case neutral platform. Another question is, what is our interpretation of clause 45 of the RBI circular? And Prosenjit, I think you have your hand raised, so I'll also give you mic access. You can ask your question verbally. If you don't want to, you can put your hand down and I'll answer it from text, which is what is our interpretation of clause 45 of the RBI circular. So Prosenjit, I've given you mic access. Otherwise, you can put the hand down, and if you don't want to speak, we'll take up the question anyway. Cool. So clause 45 essentially is in case of a loss of pledged eligible collateral and or any loss emanating from, say, a deterioration or discrepancy in the quantity or purity during internal audit or otherwise when you're returning or auctioning the gold collateral, lenders are obligated to compensate the borrower. So our interpretation of that is pretty clear. One, the question is, how are we handling such situations? We are not handling such situations. Again, right? That's up to the gold lender to do as per your policy. We only facilitate document execution through our platform, right? Anything related to the operationalization of the documents themselves, not related to gold recompensation and things like that. Our interpretation is pretty clear. You just need to compensate them. Now, how do you determine the amount of compensation? To be honest, I don't know, which is why we've not covered it in the webinar. We don't know. It's not our area of expertise. And we don't want to venture an answer there as well. One question on vernacular, but before that, Swaha, you've had your hand raised. So I've given you mic access. You can ask your question. You've had your hand raised. You have mic access. You can ask your question. If you don't want to, you can put your hand down. Anyone else also who wants to raise their hand and ask a question, please do so. Otherwise, you can again ask in the Q&A box. Cool. Prosenjit, you still have mic access in case you want to ask a follow-up. Anyone else, if your hand is raised, you can, or you can ask in the Q&A box. One question which we received was, can you explain the vernacular part from the beginning? I think Subhash explained it here in terms of how you can do it vernacularly. We also have a question on, can this be integrated with the LOS and the functions that we showed you today be processed as API calls? Absolutely. In our demo, we had to show it to you as a setup. We wanted to show you how easy it is to set up in the backend, but you can absolutely do this through API calls. Like the front end can be fully API calls as far as your sales officers are concerned, right? Can legality, like if your LOS supports language selection, can legality trigger the documents of that language? Absolutely. Where you have a workflow for each language. We'll share the deck with you. It's there in our playbook, how you can actually do it, where you can actually ensure that the when that LOS language is selected, the relevant legality workflow with that language of template is selected and triggered, right? That's a one-time configuration you have to do, but you can do it. Another question was, can the appraiser signature happen via OTP? Yes, the answer is it can be done by OTP. Okay, I've answered this question. Point 4, okay, we received a question on detailed gold valuation certificate, right? Since the valuation at the time of loan sanction will be limited to preliminary valuation, won't it become a responsibility of lender if jewels found to be of inferior quality later and customer claims it to be of superior quality? Can you please elaborate this part? Great question. Going to venture an answer, it's probably not going to be a full and comprehensive answer because we are again not aware of the full practical realities of these kind of edge cases, right? Ultimately, and if someone else wants to also answer this question based on practice, you can also do that. But ultimately, the way we see it is the valuer needs to essentially value it accurately at the time of valuation, right? The whole purpose of valuation would be to actually detect whether it's of inferior quality or not. So that so RBI is not concerned that you improperly valued it, is not the RBI's concern, right? The valuation certificate now acts as a source of truth for valuation. I don't know if there's a process where if later you find it of inferior quality, what you can do, whether you can issue a fresh valuation certificate, what can you cancel the loan based on the agreement. To be honest, I don't know. So I don't want to venture a guess there. My guess would be simply ensure that the valuation, I mean, you need to, I guess, tighten up the valuation process. Because I don't think just on a plain reading of the RBI rules, I don't think RBI is like RBI is seeing the valuation certificate as the step in which you need to ensure this does not happen, that you're valuing it accurately. I know, I guess that's an unsatisfactory answer, but that's the only answer we can give here. Cool. And if your LOS does not support vernacular system, like how can we do this via legality, right? So legality supports vernacular documents. You can one-time configure all those vernacular documents and you can create workflows for each of them. The language select screen you need not build on your workflow end. You can also build it as a simple front end as part of the application flow on your tablet or on the desktop that's there at the branch. That's a implementation question which we can help you out with. You can connect with us. So Azima, if you can go to the next slide. Right. We regularly do webinars like this, compliance-focused webinars. We are also launching a playbook specifically for KFS and the operational issues surrounding KFS and how to implement and how to run digital KFS journeys in an RBI compliant way. If you scan up to our weekly updates facility, you scan and we send you one weekly WhatsApp or one weekly email with regulatory updates, product updates, and case studies from other lenders using legality. Just scan this QR code. You will also get early access to our KFS playbook, which we will be releasing early next month. So just scan here for that. And we'll, of course, share this deck with you in the next 48 hours. So yeah, scan this. You want early access to the KFS playbook. You want early notifications for our other webinars. We look at RBI regulations, SEBI regulations that affect documentation process, and we do compliance-focused webinars on them. So if you want to stay in the loop, please do scan this webinar, and we'll send you one weekly message, which could either be a regulatory update, a product update, or a case study. So do sign up. Yeah. And if you can go to the last slide, which is how to, oh, this is the last slide, I guess. If you want to reach out to me or reach out to Legality, you can, I'm dropping my email ID in the chat below. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat below. Or you can also reach out to us, just go to legality.com and you can just contact us. We'll be happy to help. Put my LinkedIn in the chat below. And yeah, hope you had a good webinar. I know it extended a bit, but because we had a lot to cover and there were a lot of great questions, we'll share the recording with you within the next 48 hours. So be on the lookout for that. And do reach out to us if you have any other questions. Finally, last 2 minutes, if anyone has questions, someone had the hand raised. I've given you mic access. You can unmute and ask if you want, or you can put your hand down if you don't want to ask. If anyone has any final questions, we'll leave the floor open for a minute. If not, we'll end the webinar. All right, thank you. I think no one has any questions. Great. Thanks all.